When I finally found a way to get away from him and the courage to tell him that I wanted a divorce, he attacked me. I fully believed that he had full intentions of taking my life. I was strangled and severely beaten. As if the beating and strangulation wasn't enough for Mr. Stiggle, he then stabbed me more than 30 times with multiple pairs of scissors and a kitchen knife.
Can I withdraw? I withdraw. I'm so sorry. I really would like to withdraw for the victims. I'll continue to serve the rest of my sentence. I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
How many parole hearings have we seen and waited for someone to take that approach after listening to his victims to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I withdraw. I think we've seen thousands and have waited for that play. Now, is it just a play of manipulation or is it genuine? How will the parole board respond? Will they look at it as a sign of maturity and grace? Or will they say, sure, you want to withdraw? Goodbye. Now, this man, he has a violent history and he was locked up. He was given a 17-year sentence for the crime that he committed back in 2010. And oh my gosh, it was a crime spree. Multiple victims, multiple states. It was chaos. Now, he was sentenced in 2012, and well, since then, he's had a rough go at it in prison. Now, we'll go over the information in the unpacking. For now, let's jump in.
Eric J. Stiggle, Senior, 170767.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Eric Stiggle, inmate number 170767. He is serving a sentence of 23 years, execution suspended after 17 years, with 5 years probation for kidnapping first, assault second, unlawful restraint first, larceny second, assault third, failure to appear first, and criminal contempt of court, and violation of probation with underlying offense of illegal operation of motor vehicle and influence. As of today, records reflect the parole eligibility date of August 8th, 2025. There is victim input in this case. No offender accountability plan for the offender was found in his DOC file. However, per the RT3 and Mr. Stiggle has completed multiple programs within the Second Chance program, including anger management, domestic violence, tier 2, helping men recover, rich dad, poor dad, silent sons. Mr. Stiggle is currently participating in CCAR, continuing to attend AA and NA, and employed as a manager within the unit. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the moderate range of risk for recidivism. This is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin, Mr. Stiggle.
Morning.
Morning.
I first would like to say that I am very sorry for what I put my ex-wife through and Mrs. I was at a bad place in my life. Addiction. I was off medication, but I make no excuse for that behavior. I was clearly wrong, and I'm terribly sorry. I tried to do my best to educate myself as far as my addiction and mental health, and I completed various programs. I tried to embrace and become deeper in my religion, Islam. And I'm not the same person as I was then in 2009, 2010. And I never want to be that person again. I'm 54 years old now, and the various health problems, and I just want to do good. I'm involved in CCAR, heavily involved in CCAR, and I graduate from that program and become licensed in about 3 more weeks. And I just want to go to a halfway house and have a successful reintegration back into society.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Stiggle. We've read about your background, what you've done that's gotten you to this incarceration. your criminal history, what you've done since you've been inside, and based upon that, we have some questions to arrive at your suitability for parole. We're going to take turns asking those questions. We're going to hear from the Office of Victim Services and victims in this case. Then we're going to talk about your case and give you a decision. Okay?
Sure.
All right. And we'll start the questions today with Board Member Barry.
Thank you very much, Sir Chair. Well, Mr. Stiggle, I appreciate your expressing remorse for your actions and for your attempt to turn your life around and do better while you've been in the facility. I know that you have struggled to comply, but by receiving a few disciplinary infractions, and I did see that you participated in some treatment. Can you? Well, we're not here to relitigate your case. We would like to hear your version of what occurred for this kidnapping.
Sure.
Thank you.
I was going through a divorce with Sarah, and I was trying to fix our relationship that was broken, and I was in denial that we just wasn't good for each other, and it was a bad fit. I was off medication, abusing alcohol and drugs, and me and Sarah got into a confrontation, and I assaulted her, and I took off to New York, and got arrested out there for this incident. I was wrong. I'm terribly sorry for that. She didn't deserve that, and I can't make no excuse for that. I can't blame it on the alcoholism, the mental health. I was just wrong, and I accept responsibility for that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Stiggle. And again, I'm not trying to determine your guilt or innocence. We just want to see what you accept responsibility for. Do you know what injuries your victim sustained as a result of your assault on her?
Not fully. I just know they reduced the charge to assault second, but I assume it was serious injury. I don't really know the extent of the injuries, but I accept responsibility for that, and I am totally sorry. And the best way,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's what, go ahead, the best way.
The best way moving forward that I can show true remorse is by not going back and, moving forward and trying to be a better person and never go back to that life again.
I appreciate that. But in addition to the physical injuries that your victim sustained, what do you think the mental impact of this treatment has had on her?
Very serious. I believe it had a traumatic impact on her. I believe that. I take classes for that, and I've learned about that. And
Tell us about it. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, I'm involved in domestic violence and helping men recover. And part of that is understanding the trauma of what the mental abuse that abusers afflict on victims. And I'm sure that this had a very traumatic effect on the victim.
Tell us
And
some of the symptoms of trauma.
PTSD, depression, she might be in fear to be in a relationship again, but the PTSD is very serious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe her trust in men,
Right.
Doubting her decision making, all of those things are very, very significant, and they surpass any kind of physical injuries. A broken bone, they heal,
Right.
but those mental scars, they last a lifetime, And so You in helping men recover, you talk about that. What do you guys discuss in that?
We discussed our behavior towards the violent behavior in relationships. What are some of the root causes of that? How to stop it? Knowing your triggers.
You know,
How
have
it did.
you identified some of your triggers? I heard you talk about mental health and substance abuse.
Would you like me to identify some of my triggers? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Financial issues, support, what's going on with my children, my family, my mom and my pop's health, a bad day at work, a number of issues.
Yeah, there are. Do you understand in all those things you have no control over of those things?
Right. I understand that. It's how we deal with those issues when we're confronted with them.
Exactly. Yeah. And are you involved with anyone now currently?
In a relationship?
Yes.
Absolutely not. That is not my priority. I don't want anything to be in a relationship. I must rebuild my life first and take care of myself. And to engage in a relationship would just be a distraction. And I'd rather not.
Right. And do you have children with this victim?
No, but I do have children.
And what do they think about your actions?
My children and family, they were very upset. They were hurt. They were embarrassed. They've forgiven me. They still love me. And I understand that my parents they just can't go through that again. It hurt my parents.
How many years have you been down, Mr. Stiggle?
15 and a half.
A long time.
Go
ahead.
I've never been incarcerated this long. This has been a serious lesson I've learned from this.
I hope so, because you did a whole lot. There's a whole lot of crimes. You know, I mean, we're talking about the kidnapping. I mean, but there's so many, you know, there's so many other pieces of this. You know, you were just making bad decisions all around. And, you know, unfortunately, it took this period of incarceration to show you that you can't just go out and break the law and continue to think you're going to get away with it. So now you have histories here in Connecticut, New York now, and Massachusetts. You know, so yeah, all in this little, you know, I'm not going to call it the tri-state area, but you know, you're going to be heavily supervised, I would say, when you're out in the community because of your history. Tell me what was going on with all the disciplinary infractions?
I was angry. I was in denial. I was extremely angry. I had just lost my stepfather, who's been a major role in my life. And my aunt was diagnosed with cancer. I was angry at the system.
No control over any of that. You have no control over any of it. You have no control over your father if dad or your aunt having cancer. And the problem with that, like we all deal with these kinds of things in our lives. But when you start assaulting DOC officers and, you know, that stuff is serious, Mr. Stiggle. And I know that happened, you know, a few years back, but that doesn't negate the behaviors. You know what I mean?
Can I respond to the assault on DOC, if I may?
You may.
I am not by far trying to mitigate that. However, that was not an intentional assault. I was in mental health crisis at that time, and I was being restrained. They sprayed a chemical agent in my face, and put me in a dry cell with no water, and I was spitting the chemical agent out of my mouth, and some got on a correctional supervisor, Mr. Brown. I did not intentionally assault a correctional officer. That was
Regardless,
not
we know
intentional.
that's still disgusting.
Right.
However you spin it. You know, I tell my children, if someone spits on me, that's the ultimate disrespect. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, so I'm going to ask you one last question. You talked about your programs and some of the things that you've learned and insight that you've gained from the programs. You talked about your offense and your acceptance of responsibility. Talked about your disciplinary infractions. You did explain that, why you incurred so many. So I want, well, maybe two questions and then I'm done, Sir Chair, I'm sorry. But so one is, moving forward, you talked about your mental health and the substance abuse piece. What plans do you have in place when you are released from the prison and return to the community? What plans do you have in place to address both of those issues?
As far as mental health, I'm going to enroll back into counseling at the Community Health Center in New London. And I'm heavily involved in my religion. I'm a Muslim, and I will be getting counseling from the Islamic Community Center and the Islamic Center of Groton in Groton. And I'll be receiving counseling with our imam weekly.
All right. So CHC in London to address your mental health. Okay. So what about your substance abuse?
Substance abuse, I will be going, I'm involved in CCAR as a recovery coach, and I will not, under any circumstances, consume alcoholic beverages or marijuana, any of that. I have no desire to do that. I will continue going to NA and AA weekly, but as a recovery coach, my desire is to reach out to other alcoholics and help them recover. And part of doing that, I must also remain drug and alcohol free.
I appreciate that. So this is my last question. I think we talked a little bit about the assault second victim, but there is another victim involved in this case. Tell us if you had an opportunity to speak directly to the victim and tell them why you think you should be out in the community and in the form of an apology, what would you say?
I would like to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. I ask for your forgiveness. I was in a bad place. I hope that you're okay and you're able to live a good life without being in fear. I've changed my life. I'm not that person anymore. I've been in prison for 15 and a half years. I never want to go back to being that person. I want to help others. And I am totally sorry. And I mean that sincerely. And I wish you well.
And you do understand, Mr. Stiggle, that I'm sorry sometimes doesn't fix the damage that has been done. You do understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's irreparable, and I appreciate the remorse. And I appreciate your treatment with me. Thank you, Sir Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Mr. Stiggle, first I want to acknowledge that you have been doing a lot of programming, and that's really a very positive thing. And I hear from you that you really do want to, go out and help others. And 15 years should change a person. I hope that you really have taken these 15 years and really done some serious internal thinking about those things that have made you the person that you are. We're talking about 30 years of a criminal history with you, and lots of assault charges in your criminal history. So a lot of violence in your background. I'm glad to hear, your remorse and your apology in all of this. My colleague did a very good questioning of you, and to ask you the kind of question that I think I needed to be able to hear. But I have to tell you, I mean, I still share some very concerns about the nature of this offense and how serious it really was, what you did. And I'm still not even sure. Did you, in fact, take this person with you at the time of this assault? That's how you got the kidnapping charge? Because I didn't hear that when you talked about what happened. It sounded as if you left and went to New York on your own.
No, she was with me.
Oh, okay, so you did take. That's where the kidnapping came in. Because I didn't hear that, and you responded to my colleague. And again, I appreciate the work that you've done, but boy, it's hard to get past your history and the stuff that you've done and the damage that you've done. God knows to what other people you may have done this to. And I want to let you know that I'm struggling with that right now. I want to be honest with you. Okay. But I do think that you've really done some hard work on yourself, and you've really looked like you've put a focus in your life to try to really change some things in the world. And I'm glad to hear that. I really am. I hope you're going to do something about continuing your education as well.
Absolutely.
And making sure you can continue that. I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Stiggle.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Mr. Stiggle, the only thing I want to follow up on is recovery in the community, right? I know the program that you're in very well. I also know recovery very well. And the thing is that we have to make sure that when we're in the business of helping people, first person we help is ourselves. So a smart recovery coach has a recovery coach. And that's a really important thing to understand. I'm happy that you've been in eDorm since November. And that, that you're getting a lot of programming that other people in DOC actually don't even have access to. And it's process, and it's a long road. And there's an intersection between mental health and addiction. So it's about taking care of both, right? And that's really important. So, I really want you to consider those things, but finding yourself that recovery, that spiritual community that'll be there to support you on a daily basis is incredibly important. So, so where we are at this point is I'm going to ask the Office of Victim Services to facilitate victim input. And you cannot say anything during the victim's statement or sharing with us, okay? And then when they're done, we're going to talk about your case amongst ourselves, and you can stay right there. And and then we'll give you a decision in this case, okay? Ms. Hamlet-Williams, could you help us with victim input, please?
Yes, thank you, Sir Chair. Good morning, panel. I do have one of the victims on via Teams who will be addressing the board today. And when she's done, I will be reading a statement from the other victim.
Thank you.
The victim that is with us, initials AW, you may unmute and you may begin your statement.
Hi. I'm reading my statement in the form of the questions of that victim services sent me. Has the crime affected you physically? I suffered from a diagnosis of PTSD almost immediately after the crime. I had panic attacks, nightmares, insomnia, hypervigilance, flashbacks, and severe depression. I became suicidal and had to have electroconvulsive treatments at Yale Psychiatric Facility and had a home mental health care aide for a period after this crime. At 26, I didn't understand the point in life if what I was witness to, a husband trying to kill his wife, stabbing and slashing her 26 times, then threatening to rape and kill me, was what love was. I thought I might be cursed and that I was only going to be deeply harmed again, maybe even killed violently. My pain and suffering was directly caused by what Eric Stiggle did that day. You cannot unsee that kind of violence, that much blood. There was so much blood that they had to replace the wooden floors in their apartment. By the end of that summer of 2010, I had lost over 30 pounds from stress and not sleeping. At 5'3", that put me under 100 pounds. I suffered from amenorrhea in addition to other nutritional deficiencies. 16 years later, I still suffer from long-term physical effects of that trauma. My body will never be the same. Did you miss time from work or school because of injuries? For the first month after the crime, I went to a crisis therapy service 5 days a week. I lost hours of work every day that month due to travel time and the actual sessions. I eventually had to quit my job as I was working at a nonprofit doing domestic violence work, and I was simply unable to function in that field. I loved that job and that work and was the head of my program. But after this experience, the work became re-traumatizing and overwhelming. I was then out of work for almost 2 years due to significant depression and PTSD. At the time, I was also in Sacred Heart University to complete my BA and had to withdraw, delaying the completion of my degree significantly. Within months after this event, I was no longer in school or working. The trauma was just too significant. To say that this was destabilizing is an understatement. I was 26 when this happened, and my life that I'd worked so hard to create just stopped. My career ended, and any progress I had made in getting a bachelor's degree stalled. Did you have medical expenses that were not covered by insurance? Yes, extensive ones. Literal years of therapy, the ECT outpatient program, copays for psychiatric medications and therapy, which continue to this day, and other psychological and neurological care, including a nutritionist and sleep specialists. Have you had any property loss or other kinds of financial loss as a result of the crime? I had to stop working and was unable to work again for 2 years. I was truly temporarily disabled due to this experience. I lost 2 years of earning in my prime working years and had to alter my career path. I could no longer continue on the career trajectory I had spent so long creating and loved. I couldn't do my job or any job like it. I couldn't study, much less get to class without someone going with me. Because of this crime and how it changed my life, I didn't finish my bachelor's degree until I was 33 years old. All of this significantly impacted my earning ability in ways that at 41, I'm only now recovering from. In those years of lost salary and lost career trajectory, I also lost the opportunity to invest in my retirement and other ways of securing my financial future. This actively affects me now as I age and look ahead to an unsecure future. Additionally, in the short term, because he threatened to burn down my apartment in open court, I had to move out of my apartment, incurring costs of moving, lost deposits, and so forth, and into another apartment that was more expensive. Has the crime affected you emotionally? Yes. Has your daily routine changed since the crime? In the first 2 years following the crime, due to severe depression, I was unable to work or even get out of bed on my own. I was living on chocolate and Ensures and the grilled cheese sandwiches that my mental health aide made for me. I was afraid to wash my face, terrified that I would look up after covering my face with soap and water to Eric Stiggle behind me in the bathroom mirror. A friend had to gently suggest I use a washcloth. I was constantly afraid and struggled to be alone, especially at night. I started drinking at night to go to sleep because my nightmares were that bad. My depression after this event was incredibly intense and overwhelming. I genuinely didn't understand the point of living in a world where this kind of violence was possible, especially in the name of love. I'm still hypervigilant about locked doors and general safety, being alone at day or night, as the crime occurred on a Sunday morning, so it's not as though beautiful mornings feel safe. I call the police whenever I think something is wrong. I still struggle with the daily routine due to this trauma, which haunts me. Every time a parole hearing is requested, much less happens, I am pushed back into what Eric Stiggle did to me. When it comes to trauma, time is not linear. With very little warning, with any unexpected trigger, I go right back to May of 2010. Has your outlook on life changed as a result of this crime? Yes. I saw firsthand how violent love can be and witnessed a woman being slashed and stabbed. I no longer felt safe in the world, especially as a woman, and never will again. It is a permanent change in my life. As young as I was when this happened, this profoundly affected me and altered my understanding of this world. Has the crime affected those people close to you? It was devastating and very scary for my friends and family. The morning it happened, my mother, knowing as a mother does that something was wrong, came to my apartment to see why I wasn't answering my phone. I have no doubt that when she drove onto my street, packed with police cars, that she thought I was dead. I cannot even fathom what that was like for her. For weeks, my mother took me to therapy appointments, using her PTO for me, and continued throughout the process. I had to start staying with friends because I was too scared to go to sleep in my apartment, afraid Eric Stiggle would come back, especially in the first week when he wasn't caught, and then again when he was a fugitive a few months later. I no longer felt safe with anyone, and those close to me were very aware. All these years later, I still rely far too much on people in my life, my mother and friends, and I'm someone who can still be seen as broken because of a crime I had no control over. I continue to suffer from depression, PTSD symptoms, and insomnia. I enter all relationships with significant and dark baggage from this crime. Has it affected your relationships? Yes. While I understood hypothetically that people are capable of such violence, seeing it right in front of me was deeply affecting. It has changed how I relate to others, and especially in romantic relationships. I struggle to believe that love is incapable of such violence, but seeing Eric Stiggle slash and stab at his wife's face when she told him over and over that she loved him was deeply traumatizing. I'd like to think that I've had enough time in therapy to heal, but this happened at an incredibly vulnerable time, and I can never unknow that experience. The Allison was the day before this crime occurred is someone I will never again know. She is a stranger. I can never be naive in thinking I'm truly safe with another person, because I am not. Unfortunately, I know that as a fact. I want to note, 16 years later, at 41, I have finished my degrees, I've published my first book, I have 3 wonderful cats, and I have many dear friends. The fact that I finally created a stable life for myself in no way diminishes the pain, fear, and trauma that Eric Stiggle caused in 2010 and continues to cause and will cause for the rest of my life. I regret more than anything that my life was ruined when I was 26 and that I lost so many years to the trauma of this horrific crime. While I really appreciate that that Eric has done so much work in prison, and I really do believe that people have the capacity and capability to change, I would like to officially be on record as being against
We can't
any
hear you. Hang
sentence.
it.
Oh, can you hear
Ms.
me
Stanley
now?
Williams? Oh, we just missed. Can you hear us now?
Yes. I
That
was just
last piece
saying,
we missed.
okay, I was just saying that while I really appreciate all the work that Eric Stiggle has done in prison, and I do believe in the capacity of people to change, I would like to officially be on record as being against any sentence modification for this defendant in regards to this crime. I'm not in support of him being released early or being eligible for early parole.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much for an incredible, meaningful statement to us.
Thank you. Now I will read the statement from the other victim in the case. To the honorable members of the Parole Board, I would like to start by thanking all of you for taking the time to listen to my statement. I was a victim, now a survivor, of Eric Stiggle. I have to admit that I was quite disturbed when I received the call that not only was Mr. Stiggle eligible for parole, but that he was also given the privilege to earn time off of his sentence for good behavior. I was under the impression that these types of programs and privileges were only given to nonviolent offenders. I do not understand how someone who had kidnapped, stabbed, and had every intent to commit murder in such a violent manner will be given so much grace by the state. This is not a person who deserves grace or should be given an opportunity to have his sentence shortened for good behavior. Mr. Stiggle is an extremely violent person and does not deserve freedom sooner than his set release date. And in my opinion, not at all. I have suffered extreme amounts of trauma at the hands of Mr. Stiggle. The abuse started almost immediately in our short relationship and marriage that began in October of 2009 and violently ended on Memorial Day weekend of 2010. I was never able to report the many instances of abuse to the police because he was always present and made it very clear that if I called the police, I would be severely hurt, which later he would prove to be true. He bragged on multiple occasions about how he violently tortured every single woman he had ever had a relationship with and laughed about how he got away with all of it. Anytime I mentioned my desire to break up, I was met with physical abuse and threats of him going after my family and burning down my mother's house. So out of fear for my life and to protect my family, I unfortunately stayed. When I finally found a way to get away from him and the courage to tell him that I wanted a divorce, he attacked me. I fully believe that he had full intentions of taking my life. I was strangled and severely beaten. As if the beating and strangulation wasn't enough for Mr. Stiggle, he then stabbed me more than 30 times with multiple pairs of scissors and a kitchen knife. When the tenant upstairs heard the commotion and came down to see what was going on, he attacked her too and held her against her will. At one point, he tried to stab her, but I grabbed the knife, slicing my own hand, open while trying to stop him. I am so thankful she was able to escape to safety and call for help, and I still feel awful that she had to endure that trauma. After he violently stabbed and strangled me, Mr. Stiggle forced me into a vehicle and kidnapped me. I endured psychological torture as well as physical torture for endless hours while we drove around aimlessly for 2 days through 4 or 5 states. There were many times I didn't think I was going to survive. At one point, when I realized we were in Vermont, I was sure he was going to dump my body there. After a high-speed chase with law enforcement and a crash, I was able to escape Mr. Stiggle's torture. Ever since Mr. Stiggle tried to kill me, I have suffered with severe anxiety and PTSD symptoms. It took me over a year to be able to leave my house. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't even walk my dog because I couldn't handle being in public. Even today, after years of building my life back to some level of normalcy, every single time I look in the mirror, I am reminded of what he did to me because of the scars on my face, arms, and all over my body. I no longer feel safe visiting Connecticut or any place in the Northeast because of him, leaving behind numerous loved ones and a place I've known as my home for most of my life. My life has forever been changed by the violent and torturous events at the hands of Mr. Stiggle. What I went through is not something that just goes away. It is now a part of my story because he chose to attack and try to kill me. I unfortunately can't just serve a short sentence and move on. This has changed me forever. I have been plagued with flashbacks and nightmares that have only gotten worse since I received the call about this hearing. And now I have a family to protect, and am fearful that not only will he come after me, he will come after them, and this time succeed at murdering me. I am asking the board and the state to find it in their moral senses to keep Mr. Stiggle in prison for as long as possible. He is a danger not only to myself, but to every single woman he comes in contact with. Eric Stiggle has never shown an ounce of remorse for any of the harm he has caused throughout his life. He enjoys the violence that he inflicts on people, especially women. Granting Mr. Stiggle parole would not only put me and countless others at risk, it would send a chilling message to victims everywhere that the justice system does not value our pain, our safety, or our lives. I urge you, for the safety of survivors, for the safety of women, and the safety of our communities, do not release Eric Stiggle. Keep him where he belongs, behind bars. Again, I would like to thank the board for taking the time to hear my statement. My hope is that you hear, understand, and realize what a danger this man is to the general public and deny his request. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamlet-Williams. We're now going to discuss your case and give you a decision. Board members.
Can I withdraw my request for parole? Can I withdraw? I withdraw. I'm so sorry. I really would like to withdraw for the victims. I'll continue to serve the rest of my sentence. I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
So, Mr. Stiggle, I appreciate that. The easiest way for us to do that actually is to deny your case, which would have you go until DOC has you at end of sentence.
I appreciate that, though.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you are withdrawing the parole request for the injury and impact to the victim. So, Sir Chair, that would be the reason, and I will note that in the written decision, that it needs certain circumstances as well. Thank you.
So, regarding Eric Stiggle 170767, I would move to deny parole based upon injury and impact to the victim or victim's family. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Mr. Stiggle's parole is denied.
Thank you.
The hearing for Eric Stiggle, number 170767.
And don't let the door hit you on the way out. Wow. You know, there's something extra gratifying about his victims, his survivors standing up and dropping a mic to get him to say, just forget it. I don't want parole. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then storm out. I mean, it's got to be gratifying. But what's not gratifying and what is terrifying, in my opinion, is that he's getting out anyways in his full term date on November 30th of 2026. Oh my God. Then what? You know, this guy has a long record. How can you stab someone something like 30 times? What was the number? We'll go through the information Lady Holly has for us. But there's some interesting things in this case. You know, for example, he got out on bond after stabbing her all those times by tricking a bondsman. Which is just in itself, wow, how does that happen? And then I wonder, has a bondsman? So, you know, it's these things. Now he ends up serving, right, his full sentence of 17 years, and one might think, okay, that's a long sentence for attempted murder. He didn't kill her, you know, murder should be, but at the same time, I'd be terrified if I was his victims, and I don't think, now we can talk about his approach of, you know what, I don't want parole. I don't want parole. I don't believe that he said that because he has empathy. I don't. I think that this person doesn't have the ability to really have empathy. And it just goes back to thinking about, imagine if you cause someone pain. Maybe you hurt their feelings. Maybe you embarrass them in front of a group of people. You didn't mean to, but you said something, you realized the blood left their face and you embarrassed them. You might not, if you have empathy, a healthy amount of empathy, you might not forget that experience for even 20 years. You'd feel bad about it. Now imagine if you are sitting there and you're stabbing them over and over and over and over again. You see the terror in their face. You see you feel the fear that one can't even imagine unless you felt it. And to then have that kind of response, no, to me, it seemed like anger. To me, it seemed like taking back control. To me, it seemed like even possibly an attempt at manipulation. There was nothing good about that. And I congratulate the parole board. They saw right through it. They didn't even try to extend it in any way to say, you know what, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation between us. No, they just went flat out. Okay, denied. It was perfect. I thought that was perfect. It happened so quickly. And he doesn't have special parole over. He has a flat sentence. You know, it's possible that he could have still gotten out early. And I like to think that the parole board just didn't want to play that game. And you know what? Because of his attempt at manipulation. And this was even Mike Pohl. Mike Pohl, Baron Rodriguez. Mike Pohl is like, if you get a denial from Mike Pohl, you literally have to have done wrong, right? I mean, this guy doesn't deny. He'll talk himself into releasing the most dangerous, the most vile. You know, and again, he's a flat sentence. He's going to go out there. I don't think, you know, unless I missed it, I don't think he has any special conditions after, and they'll do anything to avoid that. So you can see here. So he kidnaps his ex-wife. This is the documents from Lady Holly, right? And then there's there's a few things we'll go through. One is, I have bad news. Maybe you've seen this, but case X, which is the appeals that we have been living and breathing on probably much of law to, it doesn't work anymore. Someone bought them. This service is no longer available, but we appreciate you being part of it. What a message. What a message. For legal research, please visit blah, blah, blah. It's like an AI company. They bought it. Now it's interesting because the moment I began to understand how cool AI is, I was like, wow, this is a venue for law firms that should all be in there. The amount of research that we spend on case X, that it should just be in an AI bot. Like, this is a business. So I expected the business to exist, but I didn't expect them to take away our library, which is what they did. And they also bought this on April Fool's Day, which pisses me off. I think a very tactful, strategic play. This is probably a venture-backed company, and they said, you know, there's going to be pushback. Let's launch it on April Fool's Day because we won't, you know, no one's going to, it gets lost in the sound. And that's what I thought. A DUI guy, Larry, the savior of our channel, back when Louisiana struck the channel over 70 times, and he came in and volunteered to fight them for us. I saw his tweet on X about how it's done. And then I'm like, oh, it's April Fool's Day. It's not true. And I continued to read the tweet. It said, this is not an April Fool's joke. Anyways, in a nutshell, that sucks. And it sucks also because we have a spreadsheet that archives everything with Sir Richard and Holly. And it was like our own library, and all these links are dead now. And how we're going to get the information, we're going to have to figure it out. It was a tough thing to happen. All right. That's enough about me. But it is a wrench. It is a big wrench in the future of how we unpack the cases on this channel, and I'm very upset about it. And I think a huge. I don't know how it happened. Like, it really feels like the library that was available for the public has been taken by a startup, and it just feels wrong. It really does. Now, a former Norwich man accused of kidnapping his estranged wife and leading police to a high-speed chase for nearly 50 miles appeared in court Thursday. He was picked up Wednesday from prison in Hudson, New York. And it's funny. The reason why he was in New York is because when they threw the tire strips at him to stop his car, he skidded out and like in the movie, skidded over into New York. So everything happened in Connecticut, but his car skidded off across the New York border. And that's why he was ultimately jailed in New York, which is funny. Okay, so Detective Stiggle waived extradition to Connecticut to face charges of violation of probation and 6 separate counts of failure to appear. He was on probation. Who would have thought? He's a nice, he looks pleasant. He looks pleasant. Stiggle is now being held at Corrigan Correction Center in Montville, totaling more than $400,000. Okay. On May 31st, Stiggle led police on a chase along the Massachusetts Turnpike to New York border before police used stop sticks to flatten his tires. Police said that Stiggle continued for a time with 2 flat tires before crashing just over the New York line. Oh, is this when the ads jump in? Is this now we can't even, let's see. Stiggle, at the time, was wanted by police in Bridgeport on charges that he assaulted and kidnapped his estranged wife. The morning before, police said Stiggle was seen taking the woman out of Bridgeport home wrapped in a blanket and forcing her into his car. Stiggle has yet to face charges on that case. In Norwich, where Stiggle has an extensive criminal history, he was convicted in 2006 of violating a protective order, 3rd-degree assault, and 2nd-degree threatening. Police said that while living in Laurel Hill, he violated a protective order and held his girlfriend against her will. Wait, you mean a piece of paper signed by a judge doesn't stop a crazy man from doing that? I had no idea. Someone should tell someone. Oh, maybe we'll write them a letter about that. He was sentenced to 18 months because why not? 18 months. 18 months because why not? And you know that he got out probably after what? 9 months in prison, followed by 3 years probation, because we have seen what his rapid probation works. Records show that he was released from prison in June of 2009. So let's see, 2006. Oh no, wait. June 2009, May 31st. This is 2000. This is not okay. I'm not following the math here, but okay, maybe we'll figure it out later. During a visit to his home later that summer, officials discovered beer cans, empty Pepsi Cola packaging, and Stiggle admitted to allowing a lady of the night to stay in his room in exchange for whatever lady of the nights do. According to an arrest warrant affidavit prepared by his probation officer, this April, Stiggle, who was at the time living in New London, was arrested in Rhode Island, where he was chased by police and crashed his vehicle. Stiggle is a blah, blah, blah. And then this is the funny article. I don't know why it's funny, but so this happened around this time. He got bond after he stabbed her like 1,000,000 times. But how he did it, you got to give him credit for creativity. So a New London man was accused of kidnapping and stabbing his estranged wife, has been arrested after posting bail using a fake letter from a dead lawyer. Let me ask Grok right now. This is not a political statement. I have X and Grok is awesome. Okay, so, but for the record, I have used different AI services. I actually was paying a monthly fee for one, believe it or not. And I just finally tried Grok once, and it happens to be my favorite out of using. This would be my 3rd different one, and I was paying one for a monthly fee, thinking that it would be better for my. But it was slowing up. It was just being buggy. It bugged to the point where I said, "This is. I shouldn't have a buggy piece of software." Okay, so do bondsmen lose their money if the guy escapes? I'm just curious how this works. I've been curious. For those of you who are still listening to the unpacking, cool. If you want to leave, that's cool too. That's why I do the unpacking in the end. So let's let me share this with you. Let me share this with you. I'm in the mood of sharing with you today. You know how often I rush myself through some unpacking because I feel I have this insecurity that, which is like, I hate when people just talk. I don't like listening to YouTube. I listen to so much of my stuff on 2, 3, even 4x speed. YouTube allows that now. At least if you pay the premium. I don't know if they do it without the premium. And I don't know, but I just don't feel like rushing right now. I just don't. So I assume you're asking about bondsmen, like bail bondsmen, rather than bondmen. Yes, that is what I meant. In the context of bail bondmen in the U.S., here's how it generally works. When someone is arrested and bail is set, a bail bondsman can post bail amount on behalf of the defendant for a fee of usually 50% of bail, paid by the defendant or their family. This fee is non-refundable. Regardless of what happens next, in exchange, the bondsman puts up a surety bond guaranteeing the court that the defendant will appear at trial. If the defendant, the guy, escapes or fails to show up to court, the bondsman doesn't immediately lose their money in the sense of the fee they collected. That's already theirs, right? Okay, that makes sense. Right. So you, if I have $1 million bond, he might say 10%. Okay, here's $100,000. I'm out the $100,000. That's his guaranteed. That's his profit. He puts up $1 million. Now I escape. And this is where the hunting comes down. Now he is going to go catch me. This is what I assume for that 900,000. But I am curious. What if he doesn't? What if I show up unalive, like what happened in the in many cases? So I'm curious what happens there. But let's see. However, they are on the hook for the full bail amount they guarantee to the court. The court can demand that the bondsman pay up, which would be thousands or even hundreds of thousands. In this case, $900,000 in my $1 million scenario, depending on the bail set. To avoid this loss, bondsmen often hire bounty hunters or take out measures to track down fugitives and bring them back to custody. If they succeed, they might avoid paying the full amount back, though it depends on the jurisdiction and specific circumstances. If they fail, they could say serious financial hit. I didn't know that. I guess you're right. Now, what if the escapee dies? I guess it totally depends on the contract they sign with each jurisdiction. That would make sense. So some jurisdictions, yeah, I imagine that it's like any contract, it could be varying at their own. Court forfeiture risks. I just asked Grok again. Again, not a political statement. I don't give a flying hoot. It's sad that I even feel I have to say that. Okay, if the defendant doesn't appear dead or alive, the court may initially declare a bail forfeited, meaning bondsman could be liable for the full amount. However, the bondsman can petition the court to be relieved of this obligation, providing proof that the defendant's dead. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so basically it's just like, it's going to depend. But he did trick them. Oh, God. And we did trick them. He was released, if you can imagine, on 1.3 million bail. So, yeah. And then on Tuesday, Stiggle, I wonder who wrote the letter for him and what that letter said to trick a bondsman out of $1.3 million. On Tuesday, Stiggle, who is awaiting trial for the alleged incident involving his wife, missed the court date. Who would have thought? Officers say Stiggle stabbed his wife, forced her to the car. Does it let me read more? No. Okay. Back to Lady Holly's sheet. So there's something here. His court threatened. Oh, he's threatened to state attorney. That's cool. Let's see if we can get this. Convict threatens. Oh no, there's like a paywall. But basically, in 2012, he threatened his court attorney. This guy is trouble. He is trouble. Threatening. I don't have the info on that. I can't read it, but threatening your court attorney, that's not good. We covered a case in Louisiana where someone punched his court attorney, and this one was interesting. I don't know if you haven't seen that. This case was fascinating to me. He wasn't a good guy, but he was a bad guy, right? He was like a classic, narcotics guy. But no armed robberies, no, just a punk, a young punk. He's in his early 20s. And he punched his attorney in the face in court. And then the judge gave him a life sentence for that. And then in Louisiana, he shows up something like 20 years later asking for a commutation of the sentence. And that same attorney, who is a public defender, shows up 20 years later to say that he objects to this man getting out. So this man has served 20 years in prison, essentially for the initial crime. He was only going to get a couple years for whatever it was, petty theft or something. He punches his attorney in court, gets a life because the DAs decide to throw, the book at him, because why not? He's not a child diddler. I mean, yeah, you should get a big punishment, but the defense attorney, someone who has worked his entire life defending the indigent, defending worst of the worst, because he was punched in the face, shows up to court, and he shows up in a very unclassy way. He's like chewing gum the whole time. And he yells how the guy shouldn't get released. And the guy had done well in prison to be rehabbed. He seemed genuinely remorseful and all that stuff. I couldn't believe it. God, let me put that link in the description, or at the end it'll pop up somewhere here if you want to see it. It's worth seeing. We see so much crazy stuff in Louisiana hearings. Actually, just doing hearings. Divorce paperwork. Holly finds everything. The photo, we did that. And then we get Holly's fact of the day. In Colorado, it's illegal to keep a couch on your porch. Wow, that is interesting. In an entire state, it's illegal to do that. Usually, you would think this would be done by local counties. But in Colorado, it's illegal to keep a couch. Now, I love thinking about that because someone at some point in the history of Colorado, some legislator said, probably like, my neighbor has a couch on. We got to be pissed off. Forget the chomos. Forget all the things we need to carry about protecting children. I'm going to pass into law that no one can have a couch on their porch, which is frankly insane because that shouldn't be a state law, as ugly as couches on porches are. But Colorado is a huge state. I mean, think about it. There are homes out there that are on acres and acres and acres, like where there are no neighbors looking at them. They should be allowed by law to put a couch on their porch. Now, I doubt this law is enforced, but still crazy that someone wrote legislation and passed that into law. I wonder if it was snuck into some legislation where just someone hated the couch on his neighbor's porch. There you have it. And with that, I'll leave you with final words from the survivors.
Stabbed and had every intent to commit murder in such a violent manner will be given so much grace by the state. This is not a person who deserves grace or should be given an opportunity to have his sentence shortened for good behavior. Mr. Stiggle is an extremely violent person and does not deserve freedom sooner than his set release date. And in my opinion, not at all.
Has your outlook on life changed as a result of this crime? Yes. I saw firsthand how violent love can be and witnessed a woman being slashed and stabbed. I no longer felt safe in the world, especially as a woman, and never will again. It is a permanent change in my life. As young as I was when this happened, this profoundly affected me and altered my understanding of this world.